I'm John, and tonight I want answers about Michael Flynn and Venezuela. It's a social distancing quest for answers.
I'm John Thompson.
I'm John A. Vink.
I'm Keith Stattenfield.
I'm Loretta Beavers.
I'm AJ Minnick.
I'm Jennifer Sim.
I'm Jim Tu.
I'm Bobby Chastain. These stories tonight on John Wants Answers.
John wants answers. Give John answers. John wants answers. Give John answers now.
All right, it's May 14th, 2020.
We made it another month.
2020 edition of John Wants Answers. My guest tonight is the legendary Keith Stattenfield.
Hi, everybody. Look at my messy office.
Are you still virus-free?
Near as I can, yes, coronavirus-free, I believe.
Any other viruses you want to talk about?
I'm just saying, there's millions of viruses. I'm sure I probably have some all the time.
When you get vaccinations, they kind of give you a bit of the virus, don't they?
Now, they give you something that triggers your immune system to develop antibodies to the virus, but they don't give you the virus.
Oh, okay.
If they give you the virus, you'd get sick.
I thought maybe if they just give you a little tiny bit of the virus, you'd be fine. But no, they give you something different that looks like the virus to the antibodies.
Yes.
But it's not the virus.
Correct. For some, they use a reasonable portion of the virus. Those are often called like live vaccines. In general, they are never giving you the whole virus. If they did, you would get sick because that's what makes you sick is when you have the virus.
So I should not be against vaccinations.
No, you should not. You should
be pro-vaccination.
You should be pro-vaccination.
So people can tweet us at John Wants Answer. Now we're not live, so we're not going to take your tweets on this episode. But next month, when we have an episode, I can respond to the tweets.
Sure. Did anyone tweet us in the last month after last month's episode?
No, we didn't get any tweets that I can repeat here.
Oh, okay. Well, that's par for the course. It is the internet after all.
And if you don't like Twitter, you can go to johnwantsanswers.com and look at all our past episodes. So before we get into the stories tonight, we have some old business.
Okay.
So last month, I was worried that the post office had broken because I hadn't gotten any mail in like a week.
Right.
And not only that, I had the email service, like Informed Delivery.
Yeah,
they
email you
it's delightful. And
you haven't signed up for it, and you're out in the real world, you should sign up for Informed Delivery.
Indeed. They send you an email every morning saying, here's the mail we think we're going to send you today. And I wasn't getting any of those either. So I thought the mail had broken and nothing came through. So I asked for you and the viewers to send me postcards. And I got 2 postcards.
Wow.
I got this postcard.
That's one more postcard than I expected you would get.
Well, you expected I'd get one because you sent me one, yeah.
That's correct, yes.
And it says
I expect no one else watches this show, so I thought that would be it.
Yeah.
Well, we have many, many viewers. This one was from you. It's a postcard of Santa Clara University.
Yeah, because we're in
we
Santa
have
Clara.
other postcards, but this one's handy. And then they're signed by Loretta. And then you added a little PS saying you owe me $1.01.
Correct. Yeah, that's what it cost me to send you a postcard.
What? It does not.
That's like the cost of the postcard plus the postage.
And there's labor involved.
You got like a forever stamp. Like there's no money listed on the stamp. It just says forever.
Yeah.
Another postcard. A second postcard for another loyal viewer. Yvonne. Do you know Yvonne? You know Yvonne.
Yeah.
Hi, John. I hope you are doing well. If you are reading this, then the mail is working. Give your kitties some scritches. The thing means you pet them and you scratch their heads like this.
Scritch, or scritch.
Let's see this stamp. I don't see a number on it.
They're all forever stamps.
It's a special postcard stamp she used. So I bet you paid less than you did.
Yeah.
No, mine is a special little postcard forever stamp too.
No, Loretta says that was a special postcard forever stamp too.
No, yours one just says forever on it. It doesn't say postcard. Her stamp says postcard. And it's got like a fish. So that's the old news. Old business is that the mail system is still working for now.
Sure.
But we know in September it's going to stop working.
Yeah.
Time for the election.
It still freaks me out that you brought home the wall of monitors that we normally keep at the studio.
Well, they were demolishing the studio, if you recall.
Oh, that's true. So you had to bring them home, didn't you?
They're tearing down the studio. They're building a new one. Now, I don't know if they've stopped building because of the virus. I emailed the executive director. He didn't respond to me. So I don't know.
Did they maybe stop tearing it down?
I think they finished tearing it down, but building the new one might have stopped.
And then the COVID happened.
Yeah.
Like now they've got nothing. Now they've got like an empty lot where a studio used to be.
I should try by and take a look at it and see if I was told they were like driving a bulldozer through the building the day after we taped
Wow,
that last episode.
that's kind of
All right.
exciting.
Our first topic, Michael Flynn. Okay. So who is this Michael
It's
Flynn?
different when you hear it over the Zoom.
Is it like higher pitch?
No, I just assume there's like a little bit of like some of the frequencies are cut out. Because normally he's just over there.
Uh-huh.
You know, you get all the subtle harmonics and it bounces off the walls of the auditorium we tape in. But here it's just coming through my not.
Speakers.
Yeah.
Well, we have him down the hall today. So I hear him. It kind of echoes down the hall for me.
Okay.
So Michael Flynn, who is this guy?
Michael Flynn is a confessed criminal who was a former lieutenant general in the Army and then moved into the security apparatus of the United States and worked in a couple positions. And then he was essentially fired in the way high-level executive type people are fired, in that they said, well, we're just not going to rehire you. So good luck. And then he formed a consulting company. And then he did some really skeevy criminal things. And then he, got convicted in federal court. And he's currently waiting sentencing.
Interesting. So he was in the government for a long time.
Yeah, like 30 years.
And then when did he leave the government?
Mid to like 2015, 2016?
But then he came back to the government.
Yes, for 24 days.
24 days, that's it.
Yeah.
In the new administration, so the Trump administration, he was hired. What position did he have there?
Well, during the campaign, he was an advisor to the Trump campaign on national security matters. And after Trump was elected, it was announced that he would be appointed as Trump's national security advisor, which is in theory the highest level person in the administration who reports directly to the president on matters concerning the security of the nation.
Now, given his prior experience, was this new title appropriate or wildly not qualified?
I don't think he was wildly unqualified. I think he'd been the director of national intelligence under Obama, and he served in the Bush administration at moderately high levels in the armed forces. He retired as a lieutenant general, which isn't a full general, but it's still pretty high. And director of national intelligence is a pretty high position. I don't think it directly reports to the president, but it's up there. And so, no, it's not insane that he would be qualified to be the national security advisor.
Okay, but then after 24 days of doing that, it was deemed he could no longer do that. So what happened?
Well, he had been an advisor to the Trump campaign. And there were rumors, or, reasonably well, I think after the election, it was reasonably well assumed that he would be taking a position pretty high in the administration, national security advisor or something else. And a few days after the election, when President-elect Trump spoke with then current President Obama, Obama said, by the way, you got this guy, Michael Flynn, who I understand you're considering for some positions. And I want you to know there are concerns about him because of some of the work he apparently had been doing for the government of Turkey and for the government of Saudi Arabia and for the Russian government. That, we believe he's broken some laws and may not be acting in the interest of the United States government, or the United States, but in the interest of foreign governments. Nonetheless, that advice was ignored, and they appointed him head of the National Security Agency. The National Security Advisor. As that happened, then details about what he had done came out, and he was asked to resign / fired, 24 days later, ostentatiously for lying to Vice President Pence,
Ostensibly.
yeah, ostensibly, for lying to Vice President Pence about some conversations that he had with the Russian ambassador in late December. So a couple weeks earlier at that point.
Okay. Was he not allowed to be talking to the Russian ambassador?
Well, nominally, no. We have this law on the books, and we've had it for a long time, called the Logan Act, that says U.S. citizens cannot conduct negotiations with foreign governments. Whether that law is a good idea or not, in December, President Obama imposed sanctions on a number of Russian government agencies and people for interfering in the U.S. election that had taken place 2 months earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And Obama announced these sanctions. It's generally the case that when you sanction another country, that country then turns around and sanctions you back. You know, it's a tit for tat thing. When we decide, you know, when we find a Russian spy who's done something, we tell the Russian embassy, well, you got to kick 40 of your diplomats out. And they're generally the diplomats that we think are spies. And then the Russians turn around and say, well, you got to kick 40 U.S. advisors out.
Yeah.
And those are probably the 40 U.S. advisors that are spies. I mean, that's how it is. And in this case, they announced these sanctions and the Russians went, hey, no problem, and didn't do anything. And that kind of aroused some suspicion among the people, like, this seems a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out we taped all the phone calls between, you know, going in or out of the Russian embassy, just like I'm sure they tape all the phone calls going in and out of the American embassy in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And they found a couple phone conversations between Michael Flynn and the Russian ambassador, essentially to the effect of him saying, don't you guys do anything. Trump's going to be president really soon, and we're going to make these, you know, we're going to take care of these sanctions. We're going to revoke them. It'll be fine. Don't bother to retaliate. And that probably is a violation of the Logan Act.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be making promises to other countries' governments about what you're going to do once you're in office. You probably certainly shouldn't be doing it secretly.
Okay. And so what was the lie that?
Well, and then the lie was, I mean, so the National Security Agency, another NSA, you know, had this on tape and they forwarded it to the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
And the FBI agents looked at it and went, we think that's shady, so we better go talk to Michael Flynn and find out his side of the story. Because truthfully, if that was U.S. policy from President-elect Trump, maybe it's not a violation of the Logan Act. Because if President Trump had stood on a stage on December 20th and said, I intend to remove these sanctions from the U.S. government, that's a public act. He's perfectly allowed to do that. But when they talked to Flynn and said, hey, did you have any conversations with the Russian ambassador? He said, no, I haven't had any conversations with the Russian ambassador. And
So he
the
denied-
guy was like, you didn't say anything like, and then they read some of his sentences.
Uh-huh.
He's like, no, I don't remember doing that at all. And it's, keep in mind, this is like 3 weeks earlier.
Right.
So nominally, that's what he was fired for lying to an FBI agent who was pursuing an investigation.
Okay.
And that's what he was eventually charged with, and what he pled guilty to.
So Donald Trump took justice seriously and said, I can't have a person working for me who would lie to the FBI.
Yes, nominally.
I don't think that's what he said.
I mean, the FBI had announced they intended to charge him,
Mm-hmm.
and the Justice Department, which was, you know, Robert Mueller was still the Justice Department, and he began an investigation and said, you know, we're going to investigate this and we'll press charges if they're appropriate.
I thought the Mueller report didn't start happening till months later after this.
This wasn't part of the Mueller report. I mean, Mueller, it was the same guy,
Oh, same guy. Okay.
but, you know, at the time, Mueller was a high-level guy in the Justice Department,
Mm-hmm.
and this was his bailiwick.
Is this what?
Bailiwick. This was his job.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, the Justice Department used to be somewhat independent of the executive branch.
Okay. So then he's caught lying. Then the FBI does the FBI FBI charge him, or does that the Justice Department charges him?
Well, the Justice Department charges him.
Okay. But it didn't actually go to trial. I thought he pled guilty, right?
Well, it went to trial, and he pled guilty at the trial.
Okay.
He pled to a certain set of charges in exchange for other charges being dropped. They also had talked about he has a son who was involved in his company, and there was also some stuff with respect to his son working for foreign governments. And they said, well, we're not going to charge you with working for the government of Turkey and accepting $500,000 from the government of Turkey and not reporting yourself as a foreign government lobbyist. And we're not going to charge you with these things. And in exchange, you're going to plead guilty to lying to an FBI agent, which we have you on tape lying to an FBI agent. So we're pretty sure we can get those charges to stick. And those have, a sentence of up to 7 years, whatever the number was.
Did he go to jail?
I don't believe he's gone to jail yet because they haven't succeeded at actually sentencing him.
What was
Because after he pled guilty, some time passed, and then he filed something saying they shouldn't have been allowed to talk to me, so we should throw out my guilty plea. He has been trying to unplead guilty since shortly after he pled guilty,
okay?
and mostly failing at unpleading guilty.
When you plead guilty, is that the same as being convicted of the crime?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
There's this weird. Sometimes you can plead no colo contendere, which is which is when you say, well, I don't contest the charges. I'm not going to plead guilty, but I'm not going to plead innocent. Well, you're just pleading. You're pleading guilty.
Okay.
You're essentially saying I don't intend to mount a defense to the charges the prosecution has, and I accept the prosecution's evidence as evidence of my guilt.
Okay, so he's guilty. He's waiting for sentencing, and then the Department of Justice decides they're going to drop the case. Is that right?
I think about a week and a half ago. Well, a while ago, Attorney General Barr said, I'm going to appoint a prosecutor to look into how this trial was done and report back to me on what they think we should do.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy turns out was appointed as a federal prosecutor by President Trump, the first year of his administration. And that guy came back and said, oh yeah, this whole case is terrible. We should never have brought this case against this guy. And based on that, Barr has said, well, we don't intend to continue prosecuting him. And they have asked the judge, who is currently planning to sentence Michael Flynn, we're just going to drop the case.
But
they need permission from the judge to drop the case because he has been convicted.
Right. Okay. So then they want to drop it, and then the judge, usually, I guess in this case, that'd be the end of it, right? He'd be set free. But in this case, something weird happened, and the judge said, hey, not so fast.
Well, the whole situation is already weird. So the judge has said, you have asked me permission to drop this case. And all of the attorneys who previously had been prosecuting this case have asked to be removed from the prosecution of the case because the attorneys for a case also need permission from the judge to stop being the attorneys in the case. And the judge has said, well, we're gonna have a session and we're gonna talk about whether we're gonna dismiss this case. And the rumor on the street is he's not gonna let them not prosecute the case. I mean, he could continue and just sentence the guy.
Okay. So at this point, he doesn't really need a prosecutor because the trial's over, he's convicted. All that's left is the sentencing. And so he doesn't need the Department of Justice to keep on going, right?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know if he specifically needs sentencing guidelines from the department in order. But judges have a lot of power.
Okay. So what does it look like it's going to happen?
Trump will probably pardon him.
Is this a federal court case?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Are there any?
Trump will say justice is not being done here. Michael Flynn was a nice man. He got railroaded by those evil FBI agents.
But isn't he the one who fired him in the first place?
Yeah, funny, huh?
So how
Yeah.
how great could he have been? All right. Well, this is an ongoing story, so I guess we'll.
Yeah, by next week, by the time the show is edited, Flynn will be on the street.
Okay.
Hopefully, he'll get COVID.
So you don't think there's going to be any justice here?
I am increasingly dubious about the entire concept of justice.
Well, it's time for our next topic, Venezuela.
There's a weird.
So what's the deal with Venezuela?
Well,
They're going to need more something more specific. So Venezuela is a South American country. What's their primary export?
oil.
Oil.
Recently, I think it might be their only export right now, and they might not be exporting much oil right now.
Oh, is South America all full of oil, or just the lucky Venezuelans?
No, I think Venezuela is the only real oil-producing country I can think of in the area. Maybe Colombia has a little. I think Brazil has some oil.
Is Venezuela an ally or an adversary of the United States?
Venezuela is, I believe, one of the 2 remaining communist countries in the Western Hemisphere, and they are virulently anti-American at the moment.
So they don't like America. What does America think of them?
Well, the American government does not like them. Most Americans have almost no opinion.
Yeah, because we don't really think of them much.
Yeah. Like they would have trouble identifying Venezuela on a map.
It's on the West Coast, right? Northwest Coast?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you, I have trouble identifying Venezuela on a map,
Yeah.
unless it's labeled.
Is Cuba the other communist country?
Cuba is the other communist country in the Western Hemisphere. Well, and Canada.
They're not communist.
Oh, they're darn close. With
They're
their socialist
socialist.
healthcare,
They're socialists, not communist. They have free
in
election.
line. If you've got national health care, you're 95% of the way to communist, as I understand.
That's all the countries that aren't United States, isn't it?
What?
Yeah, have you heard? Okay. So there was recently an attempt, a coup,
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the
Hey,
president of Venezuela.
ooh.
Who's the president of Venezuela?
Madeira?
Okay.
Starts with an M. It's Madeira or something.
And so there was an attempt, I'm going to use the air quotes, attempt to overthrow him by not American soldiers, right? But Americans.
I mean, Venezuela is not a well structured. I mean, things aren't going great in Venezuela right now. Hugo Chavez died, I think, 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He had been a very popular communist leader who eventually ran Venezuela like a dictator. He dismissed the legislature at one point and used to have, he had hour-long TV shows where he would talk to the people of Venezuela every night and tell them how great they were and how terrible America was and how terrible everyone else was. He eventually passed away, I think, of pancreatic cancer, some form of some cancer or something. But before that, he had kind of installed Madeira, this guy, as his successor, because he knew he was not long for the world, or he might not be. So this Madeira, was appointed as president, then ran for president the next election, won by a very thin margin.
Are elections a real thing in Venezuela? If you won by a thin margin, it sounds like they actually did have a free election.
There are claims that he did not actually win, and they cheated to push him over the top. I don't quite know how true that is. I could believe that they would have spun. I mean, it was like 51-49, which is a lot closer than you tend to think it is in a dictatorship.
Right.
So he was elected president, and he tried to change some things, but Venezuela, again, is not a great country. They don't have a great economy other than oil. So when oil prices were high, Venezuela had a lot of money as a country, and they paid for a lot of things. They ran the country, and they gave out a lot of stuff to people. And as oil prices dropped, and as countries like the U.S. and other countries started to impose sanctions on Venezuela, their economy went down, and now oil is $0 a barrel. So they are, in a world of hurt at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
He had a second election that he won by like 61%, but prior to that, he had essentially outlawed all of the opposition from running against him. So that election was almost certainly not a terribly accurate portrayal of the should this guy be president or not.
Right.
He's dismissed the General Assembly. He dismissed the legislature and just formed another he formed another legislature, and then he got the Supreme Court to kind of say, well, the real legislature doesn't represent the people anymore. So that other legislature is now the real legislature, which I didn't know you could do that. But the guy he lost to, which I think is now 2 years ago, 2018, has continued to claim to be the rightful president. And the US and other countries for a while tried to recognize him as the rightful president of Venezuela. And there was a while when it was very unclear who was actually in charge. But at the moment, Madera has he sits in the governor's mansion. When he tells the police forces to do something, they do it. The army reports to him. He is nominally the president of Venezuela. But there are people that are trying to get the other guy whose name starts with G, Giardo, made into the president.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently some people, some rebels, former Venezuelan government, former Venezuelan army folks who fled the country, have been trying to raise an army to go back in and arrest the current president and fly him to America, because we have charged Madera with drug crimes, and we would take him to federal court and find him guilty of those.
Right.
So apparently someone convinced a security company owned by a former Green Beret, got a couple of his other army friends and a bunch of former Venezuelan soldiers who were mostly in Colombia, and they decided we're gonna go into Venezuela. We're gonna go to the presidential mansion. We'll have a lot of guns. We'll defeat the security forces. We'll capture Madera. We'll put him in a helicopter. We'll fly him to Colombia. We'll put him on a plane. We'll fly him to America, and then we'll install the rightful president of Venezuela. And it did not go well.
Oh, it didn't go well.
No, because they got on a bunch of boats and they decided to sail to Venezuela, and the sea was really rough, and a lot of them ended up getting sick and vomiting over the sides of the boats. And then someone decided to live tweet their invasion, and then the Navy in Venezuela pulled up next to the boats and
Maduro,
I'm told.
and
I was close.
Guaido.
I had the letters right. So the Navy arrested as many of them as they could find, threw them in jail. A couple of them were Americans.
And then did the Americans go on TV and say Donald Trump hired us to do this?
So the guy in America who was live tweeting the invasion, who was apparently one of the instigators, has also worked security at Donald Trump's rallies. And he has said that, he is tight with Donald Trump. And I can easily believe he told a lot of people that Donald Trump is going to help us, is going to support us to go down and take care of Venezuela. I don't truthfully think there's much evidence that Donald Trump had any idea at all that these 10 guys were going to go take over the government of Venezuela, because I think they would have done a better job if
All right.
he had been involved with it.
Oh, well, I hear the music, so I guess that means we're out of time. So we'll be back in 1 month. So good night, and don't forget to take diseases. Bye-bye.
You want to see one person?
I don't think he does. I'll have to talk every once in a while.
Yeah, I think so. Or I will.
Yeah.